Hello, this is Tony here in the Kite Shop. Today I'm going to start a tutorial on building a Killip Foil 30, a 30 square foot kite. Now this kite is about 5 feet wide, 6 feet long, and I'm doing this this tutorial because we're planning on doing a build this kite at Jamestown at what we call a maker class for people, well, to all get together and build one of these kites. And a lot of people have never built a kite before, maybe have never even flown a kite before, but would like to. So this would be a good beginner kite, excellent beginner kite, and for even the seasoned kite flyer, just a good kite to put in their kite bag. And if they have never sewn together a soft kite, as they're often referred to, give them a good introduction into building soft kites, flow forms, parafoils. There's all sorts of names for these style of kites, but it'd be a good introduction for them. So I could go on and on for the introduction, but anyway, let's kind of get to it. So this is kind of a drawing of the kite we're going to build. All right, and you'll be able to download this little picture here, and if you've got a paint program on your phone or on your computer, you'll be able to color this all in. And then you send it back to me. That way I'll know what color of fabric to order for everybody. All right? And ideally, I like to see everybody have black keels. That would be ideal. If everybody gets black keels, I will cut the keels out here, because I can cut the keels very efficiently here. I could get that all done, and that would save a lot of time at Jamestown if everybody goes with black keels. But if you want to do your keels in a different color, that's okay. All right. But it's basically, your kite would have 4 bottom panels, and that's the panels that people usually color. You've got 4 top panels, and a lot of people leave those white. Okay, which is fine. Or some people use, if the bottom panel is red, then they make the top panel red, or so on and so forth. So that is fine as well. Okay. So then we have our ribs. You're going to have 2 outside ribs. Those are, people normally will color those in, although some people leave them white, or they have them match the color of the keel. And then you got 3 inside ribs, and those are often just left white. But once again, if you want all these ribs colored, you can do that too. And you can kind of mix your colors around in your paint programs on your computer, or if you don't have a paint program on your computer, print these out on your printer and get your magic markers out and start coloring. But at any rate, I will have to know what colors everyone wants, so I know what color of fabric to order for everybody. So that'll be important. This kite is going to take up about 14 yards of fabric in this kite. It's a good sized kite. There's a lot of fabric in it. And to actually build the kite, I'm figuring it's going to probably take 16 or 17 yards to actually make this kite. And then we'll also be making about a 50-foot fuzzy tail for it. Let me see, I don't have a fuzzy tail out here right now, but I'll show you the fuzzy tail a little later, and that takes a couple of yards of fabric itself. But anyway, this is kind of a picture of the kite. And of course, I'm going to build one of these kites here in the next couple of days, and I'm going to show you step by step as I do it how to cut everything out and sew it all together. Okay, so it's going to be a fairly long tutorial, as you can already tell by my yapping along here, but it's kind of necessary so that on the day that we start building, you'll have a good idea of what's necessary to put this thing together. Okay, you just won't be sitting there wondering, okay, what do I have to do? All right, so you got that. So now we will be working off of templates, and this is this right here is a a rib template. All right, and this is my template that I've used for several years. As you can tell, I got all kinds of marks on it, but I'll make up several sets of templates depending on how many people decide to sign up for the class, and that'll kind of depend on how big our classroom will be and how many electrical outlets we got, because obviously we got to have sewing machines. So hopefully we'll have enough. You know, I like to see at least 20 people in this class, but at any rate, this is a rib template. Our kite has 5 ribs in it. We have 2 outside ribs, 3 inside ribs. The outside ribs is a solid rib. We don't have these vent holes. The 3 inside ribs have the vent holes. Okay? And I'll have those all marked up so you know which is which, or notes on here so you don't cut holes in all of the ribs. And then on the center rib, you cut off this little tail piece. I don't know if you can see that where I just pointed to, but you cut off that little tail piece, and that'll help form what we call the jet chute. And once again, I'll show you that when we get to that part of the build on the kite. Okay? And then we also have, well, I got it kind of all covered up here. We got a template for our top and bottom panels. I use 1 long sheet of cardboard from that end of the template to this end, to this mark here, is our bottom panel. And then from that end of the cardboard to this end of the cardboard, that makes up our top panel. So 1 piece of cardboard does it all. And each panel is 15 3/4 inches wide, and that it ends up, well, anyway, I've got a 3/8 inch seam allowance, 3/8 on each side for our seam allowance. You got to have a seam allowance, and everything has already got that built into the template. And one reason we have a 3/8 inch seam allowance is you're going to be using some seam tape. I do not use very much seam tape. Some people may end up using a whole lot of it. Some people might not use any. But I always use a little bit when I'm taping things together. As you start building, you're going to have, at times, most of the times, you're going to have 3 layers here that you're going to have to start sewing. And when you put the keels on, put everything together, you'll have 4 layers of fabric here. So it's good to get everything taped together just to get things started, okay? So by having that 3/8 inch seam allowance and using 1/4 inch seam tape, when you start sewing, you're going to miss this seam tape and you won't be sewing through it. That'll keep your needle clean, all right? So that kind of explains the seam tape. So one of the things you need to bring to the class on sewing day is seam tape, double stick seam tape. It's not terribly expensive, you know, $4 or $5 depending on where you buy it. I get this from Sell Right. I don't know, you get a great big roll for, like, I don't know, $5 or something like that. This is the vinyl seam tape. Okay, so anyway, we'll have templates for the ribs, for the top and bottom panel. Now, template for the keels. This is a real small kite here. I don't know if you can see this very well. This is a keel, a very small keel. This part right here. This is actually a rib. This half here is a rib. And this part is the keel, okay? I do not have a template for the keel. I simply roll my fabric out and I draw the keel right out on the fabric, and then I cut it. It's, you know, basically you start off with like a rectangle, draw a line across from corner to corner, and you got two keels, depending on your measurements. So it's you know, for me, it's really simple to do that, and I just don't like using a template for the keels. So, yep. Okay, put that aside. Okay, now, what else? What do you need to bring to the class? Okay, first of all, seam tape. All right, sewing machine. Need to bring a sewing machine. Need to bring extra needles in case you break a needle. Need to bring some extra bobbins. You might want to preload at least, I would say, maybe 3 bobbins to get things, just so you have bobbins ready, so you don't have to take time to load up that bobbin and then have to, you know, rethread your machine and everything. Need thread, good thread. What you want, 100% polyester thread. No, absolutely no cotton thread. Nope, no cotton thread, 100% polyester. Now, I recommend a Gutermann thread, and you can get this at Joann's. I say Joann's a lot, because that's what we have here in town. This is a Gutermann 100% thread. This is kind of one of their bigger spools. 1,000 meters on here. Yep, 1,000 meters on here. More than enough for this kite. It's just really good thread. And people who build kites, they've all got their own special brand of thread. But they're all going to tell you to use 100% polyester. Okay? So, this is my recommendation. The Gutermann thread. And save up your Joann coupons. I think they're selling this stuff for like $10 full price. But if you got the 50% off, you know, that makes it, what, $5 or so. So, you got to have thread. Okay, another thing, as part of this build, is we edge the whole kite in this gross grain ribbon. This is kind of an example. This is part of a keel. Well, you can see it on this little kite here. The whole thing gets edged in this. This kind of keeps the edge of the ripstop from fraying and gives it a little bit of form. Keeps it from collapsing. Makes it look a little better too. Gives it some contrast. You'll be able to use either white or black. Those are the 2 colors that I have, white or black, or what I can get in bulk. So I'll need to know, when you send me your colors, you know, your things, what color of trim you want to put on. Okay? And let me show you this. So like right here, you're sewing through 3 layers of material, as well as three layers of your cross grain ribbon. And then down here, you're sewing through 4 layers of material. And in the beginning, you're sewing through 4 layers of the cross grain. Okay, and your home machine should be able to do that. No problem. Okay, so that's what we use all this cross grain ribbon for. Now, if you have an edge binder that'll fit on your machine, bring it along. Now this is 7/8 inch gross grain ribbon. I keep wanting to say cross grain, but it's gross grain. I don't know why they call it gross. But I buy mine from Uline because you can buy it in a 100-yard roll, so you have less waste that way. And even though they say it's 7/8, it's actually 1 inch. So I don't know what they're using for a ruler, but it will fit through a 7/8 inch edge binder. It's kind of tight, but it will run through there. But normally I will use the 1 inch binder. Okay, now before I got my industrial machine, because this edge binder here just screws right on, and man, it's a dream to use. But before I got my industrial machine, I'd take this and I use blue painter's tape, and I'd tape it right on the sewing machine there, and I'd have it positioned, and then I had marks, you know, on the machine, so I knew right where to place it all the time, and it worked pretty good. Not perfect, but pretty good. So sometimes I'd have to go back and rip some off, but it worked pretty well. Okay, the alternative to not having one of these is doing it the hard way, which is what I did for a long time. Is you have to iron and fold, and well, you do it all at one time. Do this by hand, and what I will do, I will iron and fold several hundred feet of this stuff for everybody. For people who don't have access to an edge binder, all right? So that you can do this the old-fashioned way. And to do that, let me see here. What have I got? Yeah, you can kind of use that. But basically, you put a little piece of tape on here to hold it in place, and you like fold that over like that, and then you just start doing that. Pull it tight and sew. Pull it tight and sew, and it takes a lot longer to do, but you know, it is what it is. You just got to do it. And there's about 60 feet of this. There'll be about 60 feet of this edging on this kite. Okay, about 60 feet of it. So, and I'll be supplying this and ironing up a whole few hundred feet of that. Okay. So once again, if you do have an edge binder and it does work fairly well on your machine, let me know, or whether you have one or don't have one, so I know how much of that material to iron up or to fold over. Okay, so you need an edge binder if you got it. Another thing, if you have a centering ruler, a centering ruler will come up really handy. If you don't have a centering ruler, just your standard metal ruler will work, because this is a Killip. I don't remember what kite this come off of, but this is kind of what our Killips are going to look like. The Killips on this bigger kite are a lot different than this kite. That's a real small kite, but this kite we do the Killips a lot different, a whole lot different. But so the idea of the centering rule is to find the center point between these 2 points here. And the centering ruler just helps you find that. I've actually got some real long rulers, but if you got a 12-inch one, that works good. Otherwise, just use a regular ruler. I like these metal rulers because these are excellent to do your hot cutting on. Okay? So if you have to hot cut something, which, we're going to have to do, you can just hot cut right on your ruler. Works really well. on the back side of your metal ruler. Okay, and so if you got a hot cut gun, you can bring that. Okay, another thing we're going to have to use is we have to cut these vent holes. The best way to do that is with a pin, hot cut pin, or this is nothing more than a small soldering iron, or some people use wood burning iron. Basically they're the same thing, and you put that small tip in there and put something underneath. I'll bring some heavy pieces of cardboard so you can slide underneath here and cut your hole out. All right, so we'll probably once again, I don't know what that classroom looks like or how many work tables we'll have. So we'll probably have to maybe just set up a work table so people can bring their ribs up, cut their vent holes out, and you know, then go back to their sewing tables. So we'll have to kind of work things out once we get to the classroom, because I just don't know what the classroom looks like. So a pin, hot pin if you have it, that's what I call them. Hot cut gun, because when you put all your edging on, you got to trim those edges off of each piece. And of course you'll see that when we get to building this kite, our sample kite. You got to have that. Rulers, tape measure will come in handy, especially because when we get done with the kite and we start working on the back end, the kite has to be square. Okay? Just like being a carpenter, you got to make sure your frame is square. We have to make sure our kite is square, or rectangularly square. So tape measure will work. We also are going to need about a 6 foot, at least a 6 foot straight edge. I got one 6 footer here. I got two 8 foot straight edges. I'll probably throw those in the trailer and bring those. So if you got at least a 6 foot straight edge, bring that. If you got maybe a 5 footer, if you're a sewer, or your husband or whatever is a carpenter, whatever, bring some big rulers. Okay, marking pins. We're going to need marking pins to you know, trace out your templates to cut. I would avoid using the soft number 2 pencils. They tend to smear and smudge on ripstop, and it'll end up on your fingers. And if you're using white or yellow, the lighter colors, you end up with that graphite all over the place. So avoid just using a number 2 graphite pencil. Okay. Of course, here I use these special little water-soluble markers. You can get these at Joann's, because on ripstop anyway, you can mark and then take a damp cloth if you have to later on and just wipe that off if you make a mistake. Okay, but you can buy water-soluble pencils at Joann's. And I even use magic markers. I use magic markers, especially on the white. If you're very careful, you can use a fine point magic marker. They work good. I use them all the time, especially on white. Can't get that in the thing. Okay? And probably last but not least, a seam ripper. Gotta have a seam ripper. Okay? Because I can guarantee you, at some point in time, somebody in the class is going to have to rip out a seam, if not everybody in the class at some point. So, gotta have this seam ripper. It's a must. Gotta have a seam ripper. Okay? So, I think I've covered just about everything at this point. I think the next next part will be probably cleaning this table off and start cutting some fabric. Okay? All right.